Here we go, 14.4, 14.5, 14.6, starting off with studying the effects of hazards. So wildlife studies integrate work into the lab and the field. So that you can see the guys on the bottom here, they're basically taking blood samples from stuff, they're working with lab frogs, stuff like that, because they're trying to figure out what toxic substances are in the environment and how they're affecting those animals that are in the environment. So moving on to page 370. Oh, side note, there's not going to be too many sticky notes with this one, just FYI. So moving on to 370 here. So case history is a thing that they lock that a lot of scientists kind of like to use to talk about the studies that they're doing in the wild. So studying one patient to see how a poison affected them in a short time span. So you can see kind of right below this here, they talk about this process of observation and analysis of individual patients known as case history. So as you read on, case histories have advanced our understanding of human illness, but they do not always help us infer the effects of rare hazards. New hazards are chemicals that exist at low environmental concentrations or exert minor long-term effects. So they're good, but they also have their limitations as well. So they also do what's called epidemiological studies, which is when a group of people are compared against one another. So that's one of the things they start to do with kind of trying to infer the different chemicals over a longer time span. So 371 has this graph talking about the LD50 stuff, which we just talked about today. So this dose response analysis, all those different things. So since we kind of talked about this and we practiced it with that worksheet, I'm not really having us do any sticky notes about it since we're practicing with it anyway. So this central case study, or excuse me, the science behind the story is pretty interesting about how pesticides are affecting child development. It's a really interesting read, and you can kind of summarize it up by these diagrams up here. So those in the valley had pesticides around them, those in the foothills did not, and you can see just basically the difference in their drawings at 4 and 5 years old. So moving to 374, go back and zoom in here. Stuff called synergistic effects. So this is one chemical that can be bad, but add together other chemicals to it, and it can really get out of control. So CEOs love to use this terminology synergy, where they talk about a whole bunch of different pieces of their company working together. That's what the synergistic effect is talking about. A whole bunch of chemicals all in the environment working together to do, unfortunately, bad things in this case. And we talked about these endocrine disruptors. They may be the reason for breast cancer frequency increasing. And that's what we're talking about, like hormone disruption and stuff like that. So now we're going to talk about this risk assessment and risk management. So like we talked about before, is this kind of like this cost-benefit analysis. So we express risks in terms of probability, but our perception may not match reality. So you can see kind of the examples down here, this picture, like 1 in 7 people are going to have heart disease and cancer. 1 in 27 have the chronic lower respiratory disease, and so on, so on, so on, so on. So that's what we're talking about. Perception of risk may not match reality because 1 in 7, that's higher than 10%. So somebody's going to have heart disease and cancer in your life. I guarantee it. So then risk assessment analyzes risk quantitatively. And so again, I'm not having you guys write down much here because I think it kind of I don't even know terminology, like it's easy to understand. So there are 2 approaches in dealing with new substances that basically kind of get put into the world. So either you can assume it's harmless until proven harmful, or you can assume harmful until proven otherwise. Okay, it's kind of like, kind of the perception of, you're guilty until proven innocent, or you're innocent until proven guilty kind of way. So this chart down here, I said know this chart. So you can see there's basically the risk assessment going into the risk management. That leads to policy. And you can kind of see what's all impacted and kind of goes into each of these. So scientific results and measurement of probability, that goes into the risk assessment. So we got hazard identification, toxicity characterization, the extent of the exposure. All of that goes into risk assessments. Then, so this kind of think about this is like, the science side. This is the social science side. So the political, social, economic, and ethical considerations. So information, opinion, and lobbying from private citizens, industry and manufacturing, and nonprofit interest groups. That all goes into risk management. So we kind of weigh those two things, and we come to a policy about it. So here's another chart that kind of illustrates all of this. So innocent until proven guilty approach, or the precautionary principle approach. And I'm not going to walk through this because as long as you walk through it, it should make pretty good sense. So that's 377. Moving to 378, excuse me. So this is literally our last page. And I know this one's a pretty short one, which I'm happy about. So different views on chemicals drives the policies that regulate them. So there's the TCSA, there's the US, versus the REACH, which is the UA. So you can see up here, top left-hand corner, they go into that Toxic Substances Control Act of 1976. That basically makes it so the EPA's got to monitor thousands of different chemicals, which is good, but also bad at the same time. Give them a lot of power, but there's a lot to manage all at the same time. Then there's the REACH. You can see it there. Program went into effect. REACH stands for regulate, blah, blah, blah. REACH largely shift the burden of proof for testing chemical safety from national governments to industry. That's kind of the different version of what it is. Either the government is kind of having control over that, or the industry is kind of control over that. All right, leave some questions. We have to talk about.